Welcome back, everybody, to your daily update on the state of the Malazan Empire, and we continue our talks about Book 4 of House of Chains. And there's going to be a lot happening today, I suspect, at least. But first, the quick update on that leg warmer thing, which is more of it's a leg warmer, but so far it goes up to here. I suspect it will go like until here, like another like 10 centimeters, and then I'll do another one of these border thingies on the other side, and then we're done with this one, and then I'll continue with the next one for tomorrow. And if I get a lot of knitting done tomorrow, it might be done by tomorrow evening. Won't that be fun? Anyway, let's get into the whole thing, and let's get into House of Chains. Cheers. All right, so the main thing I figured today we're gonna focus more on the Whirlwinds camp and stuff going on there. We definitely have a bit of army things to talk about more. The whole situation of Fist Gamut, then non-Fist Gamut, then Fist Gamut again, maybe. And certainly Lorik and a lot of world building information and shit going on there that I feel is interesting. So let's look at that. Let's start with the Lorik thing, because so Lorik is doing some questing of his own, and he steps into a memory, which is not a warren, but a memory, which has like at the same place, but ages and ages and ages and ages and ages ago. And he sees some very interesting things, some large hounds that are not hounds of shadow, but something called Deregoth, which we didn't have the name before. But we've seen two of those animals before in the scene with our good friend, what's his name? Anrak and Tral Sengar, those that were in that bit of the warren of the nascent in those statues, you remember? Yeah, those ones. And now we figure out that there's 7 of them, at least 7 of them, which kind of makes sense when you have the 7 hounds of shadows, and you figure that there's like shadows are a reflection of something. And yeah, they run around with what I would call like with some pre-human species, even some pre-Talana mass species. We don't have a name for those yet, but that's what he sees. And the interesting thing there is that Lorik sees them, hanging, going around with them, and it looks like the hounds are domesticating the humans, which is something then that he talks with his father about, because we meet his father, Lorik, who is the Trist Leosan equivalent, sort of equivalent, I would say, to Anamander Rhaeg, and still a very different kind of person, right? All right. So, and he also explains that he has seen those proto-human, pre-human people of unknown name so far running with wolves in an alliance where the wolves are in charge and the humans are slowly being domesticated. And I think that's an interesting concept to see, like how the alliance between certain animals and humans is working. How domestication might work or might not work, because at the beginning that's a partnership of equals between those two and not just the other thing. Now, is that realistic for a human society? Maybe not for reality, but maybe it's just an interesting way to look at it. This is this great quote from Terry Pratchett at some point where he talks, I think it's in The Last Continent. Yeah, it's on The Last Continent, and Rincewind has this sheep watching him, and is like, the sheep looks at him with the with the stare of a domesticated animal, reminding its domesticator that they had a deal. And that's the point there. It's a deal, it's an alliance in a way. It's not people just like both sides profit from this kind of thing. Well, maybe not with the Deregoth because they are so super powerful. I don't know for what they would need humans, but that's a different question to look at. The whole thing of Decemberlakis and the First Empire comes into that, but I don't know shit about that because I am not a lore person. Anyway, the thing that I wanted to look at more in this regard, however, is something else, and that's the relationship between Lorik and Osric. That's something that I find very interesting in a way. The dynamic going on there is rather, it's so basically it's one that I find like usually is explored to a to a level of tedium or frustration that I can rarely bear in more modern contemporary, or not even only contemporary, but more like so-called serious literature, literary fiction, where you have that problem with the like very very prominent strong father, and the this father son dynamic, and the son feeling unequal to the like the father's expectations, feeling overshadowed, not actually taken notice of enough or whatever. And it's just like an interesting thing to look at that, especially when you see how how Osric shows up. Yes, he's a soul taken, but still, the idea of the father figure as a dragon is like a powerful image, like to see how that like dynamic in that the father son dynamic is going on there. So that's something that I found just very like poignant when I read it today, which is something I completely overlooked the times before. I just found Osric, or whatever you want to call him, rather annoying. um Another thing in there that I found interesting is the idea that Osric's like, yeah, the Tisleosan, they're not actually worshipping me, they're actually worshipping themselves. And I feel that's an interesting thing when you compare him there to Anomander Rake, where Anomander Rake said that his people would worship him, but he's denying them that worship. Osric, on the other hand, is basically just ignoring it or not taking it seriously, where Rake takes an active effort to curtail that kind of worship, because that worship comes once again like the domestication. It comes with responsibilities and a deal, and obviously Osric doesn't want to take on that responsibility, which I get. I would not want to do that thing, right? I mean, I do get all of that. We also meet for the first time Grey Frog, and he's really cool. I just love the way he talks. That's just really cool. As someone who has fucked around with computer programming and stuff like that, especially like in the artificial intelligence area, I I just feel very I I am amused by the way Grey Frog is communicating, is what I'm trying to say there. So that's cool. What else in that Lorik area? Maybe not so much, but a general thing that I felt like something that I need to think more about. But the idea of those Elder Warrens, Corald Galain, Corald Thirlan, and Corald Emerlan being more or less not accessible by humans. But you have these shadow realms, like shadow warrens, that are like the shadow warrens that are basically not only shadow warrens. I'm running out of words here. So you have different warrens that are further away from that pure warren of fire of light, which is Corald Thirlan, and that pure warren of darkness, which is Corald Galim. You have those shadows, which are the different shadow ones, but you also have Telan and Thir, which are like sort of lesser versions of that. That whole thing kind of reminds me a bit of the whole setup of the world building in Chronicles of Amber, where you also have these points of chaos and order, and these pure courts of chaos, and Amber on the other side being the like pure core of order, and everything in between these shadow realms or shadow worlds that are shadows of those pure ideals. Now, obviously, there's a lot of weird Platonism going on there in Amber, and this is not an Amber review, but it just popped into my head when you have this idea of the these elder warrens, and obviously you can make this idea the same idea that if that Kurald Thirlan is the Platonic ideal of light, and then you have these versions that are sort of further away from that Platonic ideal and go closer to human accessibility, which I'm not saying you should do that. I'm just saying I'd rather have a Platonic universe than an Aristotelian universe in that regard, because it seems to be more fun. So yeah, there's that small bit of philosophy for today. If you want to know more about that, read that whole parable of the cave from Plato. That's the point where you need to look for that whole idea about the shadows and the ideas. You can read more of it if you really want to, but that's like the quick introduction. And after that, you go and read Terry Pratchett's amazing Small Gods, where there's a crazy good joke about that whole parable of the cave in there. All right, that's that for now. Let's continue to something else that I feel is interesting. Felicin has a moment of clarity and reflection for once, when she reflects and thinks about the whole thing that she has, that vengeance is maybe not very is a useless emotion, and how she has set herself up in that conflict with her sister, and how her using becoming Sharik Younger, Sharik Reborn, to use to take in that alliance with the Whirlwind Goddess on the one side, how that mirrors her sister sacrificing in a way Felicin to get that loyalty with the Empress on the other side, and how that mirrors each other, which obviously feeds back fine into that prophecy that Daika watches at the beginning of Deadhouse Gates. Now Felicin kind of realizes that is the case. Now the question is, obviously, does she still go through with the whole thing in that moment of clarity or not? And I feel that, like, the way I'm seeing it right now, she willingly sort of accepts the current situation. She doesn't, go out and assert agency to change anything. She willingly submits at this point, is how I'm seeing it right now. If that is because she is just like so broken that she feels there's no way out of this in any case, so it doesn't matter, or if there's something else, that's something we need to figure out. If there's more of her reflection moments going on later within the book, there might just be. So yeah, we have that part. What else? I feel we need to talk about Fist Gamut trying to be a fist, trying to take his responsibilities seriously and struggling with them. This onset of confusion and so forth that got him hurt bad in that first large-ish encounter with the Leomans Raiders. That's definitely something to be looking at. And how he reacts after that, and being completely broken down, and then coming back to take his responsibilities. I feel the important thing here is not so much Gamut and his constant inner monologue about and self-recrimination, which, is something that I know way too well from myself. So I have some feelings there that are less than charitable, because I don't have those charitable thoughts for myself. But I feel it kind of interesting to look at Blizdik here, because it's important to look at Blizdik in general. He's one of those characters that I want to have, I said that before, right? But I want to keep a closer look on this time around, because I've my previous two readings, I really didn't like the guy at all. So this time around, I want to have a closer look at what Blizdik does and how he as a character develops, because that's something I feel I might have missed something the first two ways round. In this case, Blizdik, from being someone who is like super critical of the adjunct at the beginning, he's still critical in a way, but he is a very constructive character so far. He tries to get Gamut back. He realized the problem with Lieutenant Ranal being made Captain Ranal because he's an idiot. Or maybe not, but him being a nobleborn, he realized that the problem with nobleborn officers, he understands these things. He's a good soldier at this point. He's a very good soldier. He might not be happy with the way his commander, the adjunct Tavare, is communicating, but so far he is not questioning her orders. He is, he's a very constructive, professional soldier and a good fist at this point, which is something I find interesting to look at. And he knows exactly what he needs to do to get Gamut back in the saddle, so to speak, by making him angry, by insulting him so far that even Gamut gets angry and cannot go lower in his tour of self-recrimination, which he's on before. And the problem with people when they are in that whole self-recriminatory downward spiral, are in that. And it's something that, once again, I've said, I've known for myself. It's like, it's very, very easy if you're already deep in that spiral to just take any kind of insult and just say, yeah, I know. I already told you I'm not you. I already told you I'm shit. So, right. Come at me, I can take it. But the interesting point is to actually keep pushing to figure out that in this case, actually pushing further is the right way to go to get Gamut back on his feet. And so that's something that I found interesting or good to read today. And it's definitely going into my overall reading more about Blizdik, because I kind of dismissed him before, kind of thing. So, yeah, that was a good and interesting thing. What else should I look at? We see a bit more of Fiddler here, a small bit of Fiddler that will maybe become interesting later. Now, you remember Fiddler, we always heard that Fiddler has these hunches and ideas, hunches and gut feelings that sometimes come true. And he played these weird games with the deck of dragons and we already learned, and that's the interesting thing, we learned about the fact that he has some aptitude, some talent with the deck of dragons. We learned that from other people, not from him, and in a book where he isn't even there. And now we're back with him. And he actually helps Bottle run through that divination that Bottle is running through. And I feel that's in a way an interesting thing to look at, because it shows Fiddler as someone who is now a sergeant and has to take more responsibility for his group. Also accepting or being more, he was conscious of his talent, I suppose, but being more taking hold or taking action more actively here by helping Bottle with the divination. And I don't want to say accepting, but maybe accepting the fact that he knows how to do that kind of thing. He's still not telling Bottle how to run it, but he is going there and grudgingly helping him. So that's an interesting thing to look at, to see how Fiddler comes to terms with his talent when it comes to divination / the deck of dragons. So that's just an interesting thing that I found also well worth looking at. I guess. Not only I guess, but yeah, that's something I found very good. What else? Well, there's definitely Karsa Orlong realizing that he likes to kill people, which I feel is a really interesting point. Like his return to Shaikh's camp so far is once again shows like how Karsa as a character develops, which is something I really enjoy looking at this. I mean, don't get me wrong, Karsa is not exactly my favorite character within the books, but I find it interesting to see how many nuances you can put onto a character who is, on the other hand, overtly, like when you look at it, really, really fucking simple, right? Like it, simple in the way he's a very simple character. He is a barbarian who likes to kill shit and really hates orders or rules. That's basically him. He's basically me with all the abilities that I don't have and a bigger sword. Um, but yeah, and but there's a lot of nuance to that. He's smart. He's getting smarter. He understands more about himself and more about the world every day. And that's cool. And I feel, in a way, that's the other thing there. Like I spoke about Karsa being also a meditation on all of like on as a meditation on Joseph Campbell's idea of the monomyth and the hero's journey. And one way you can read it to take that up again is Karsa is totally Karsa Orlong is continuing his hero's journey. He's not returning to bring that sacred thing that he finds wherever in the belly of the whale, as Campbell puts it. No, he just keeps going. I mean, yes, he promised several times to return to his people, to lead them to freedom and so forth. But so far he's denying that, like, pressure and that resolution to what Campbell would use as the monomyth, which I find cool because fuck Joseph Campbell. Um, seriously. So yeah, there's that, which is cool and which is interesting, and even the wit that he's slowly developing is his sense of humor is also something that I find nice to see how that starts actually showing up. So that's really cool. Um, the whole Bidithal, Febril, and Corbolodom situation is another thing that we need to look at, I suspect. I find it very interesting that this is sort of the first time this far in that we actually learn anything about Febril. Like, we as readers already knew everything about, not everything, but relatively early on, we knew basically what Corbolodom is, who Corbolodom is, what he wants. We also learned relatively early on in the book, more or less all about the motivations of Bidithal, and all the time Febril stayed that enigma in the way that no one knew anything about. It's like, and now we get it all turned out. It's, if you look at the rebellion in Seven Cities from the rebels' point of view, the only one who is actually really true, well, as true as it gets, really true to the rebellion, and the only real true believer in a way into freedom for Seven Cities and all of these things, the only one really doing that is Febril. Now, obviously, he's also recognized that the goddess herself is a problem. And truth be told, at this point, I feel kind of sorry for the whirlwind goddess in a way. It's like she's raging and she's angry at something that I'm not going to reveal here because we're going to find out at the end. And everyone is just, taking advantage of her. Everyone is just abusing her and just trying to take their power, trying to take her out, trying to manipulate her, and so forth. And Isn't that kind of sad? I mean, really? I feel kind of pity for the whirlwind goddess, despite all the like havoc she wreaks. But that's just a random thought on the side. So yeah, Febril is the only real true believer who wants freedom for seven cities and return to like the glory good old days of seven cities. Now this is obviously also a problem because once again, that's what I found so interesting within the whole like way the camp is set up in seven cities is basically that camp in Raraku, Sheikh's camp, how that's set up. The interesting thing there is that it very much resembles rebel camps in our world as well. You have all these people with all kinds of different motivations, like dragged together. You have a few traditionalists and nationalists. Don't get me wrong. At the end of the day, Febril is a nationalist, a very conservative nationalist, and someone that I would never want to hang out with in real life, even if I were from Seven Cities, because that's not the kind of person I like. Then you have the absolute opportunist, disgruntled former enemy like traitor like Corbolodom and Camestrello, who in their deepest heart of hearts want nothing better than to return to that empire they have betrayed. That's You have those people in there. You always have traitors in those kind of rebel camps. Then you have the religious maniacs like Bidithal, and the interesting thing there is that he's a religious maniac and power hungry. But the religion he actually wants to work with is not the religion he espouses when he talks about the whirlwind and all of that, which is like an interesting dynamic for it in itself there. Yes, and then you have like the flotsam, the just like refugees that were basically ground down by the outside world so far that they had no other way, no other place to go to than the rebellion and the rebel camp. And that's, people like Heboric, people like Shaik, younger, Felicin Elder, or whatever you want to call her. People like Silara, all of these people in the middle there. So yeah, and obviously you have the people like Leoman, and to a lesser or greater extent, Mathok and the desert warriors there, who are basically there because they're desert warriors. They like to fight wars in the desert, and they'll fight anyone. That's the point. That's just their lifestyle. And up to a point. I mean, obviously, they're also probably happy if the Malazans are gone, because the Malazan civilization and the progress that the Malazan Empire brought to seven cities is a threat to tribal warfare as a way of life. Now, we can all discuss whether a constant warfare or feuding between tribes is of real benefit to the overall population of a continent. And I suspect the answer will be no. But because, make no mistake, that kind of like tribal warfare is always a thing of the elites, because the warrior caste or warrior class will always be the elite, and there's always going to be the poor motherfuckers who are out there and need to tend to the herds and plant the crops and feed those people. That's always going to be there. And the Malazan Empire takes that lifestyle of the elites away. So that's, I guess, the other thing there. Most of the people actively taking part in that rebellion are the former elites. It's not actually gonna help the like downtrodden masses, or like the shouldn't say that, the general populace of seven cities. For those people, not much will change. Maybe the Malazan Empire was actually bringing positive change because overall, like, wealth is rising within the empire. All right. Anyway, that's I guess as much as I want to ramble about today. I hope you enjoyed this. If so, let me know. If you disagree, then also let me know, and I'll talk to you tomorrow, and maybe I'll be done with House of Chains by then. It's not that much left. Like, I don't know, 3 chapters left, so I could be done by then. All right. Have a great Tuesday evening, and I'll talk to you real soon. Cheers.